Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Today we have breaking news coming from many corners of the world, as we've been able to hear that the United States Armed Forces have declared that they have wiped out all Houthi leadership within the western area of Houthi-controlled Yemen. We've also been able to hear some significant news inside of Israel, as limited ground operations are once again underway inside the Gaza Strip, and it also appears that the Israelis may be preparing for some sort of a possible war with the Republic of Turkey, as news has come out today that the Israelis are concerned about this, as the Syrian interim government is now possibly willing to give over territory to the Republic of Turkey for a possibly indefinite time window. Meanwhile, inside of China, we've been able to hear the unveiling of a brand new undersea cable cutter, which is claimed to be able to destroy undersea cables as a ship is underway thousands of feet above the cable on the ocean surface. Meanwhile, we've also been able to hear the U.S. denuclearization warnings to the Islamic Republic of Iran are continuing, with once again the statements of fire and fury, the likes of which never being seen before, are still being echoed throughout any statements made by U.S. government officials. Meanwhile, in Eastern Europe, the Republic of Lithuania is now wildly concerned that the Russian Federation will attack their nation in the later parts of this year during the fall. And we have been able to see that the Lithuanian government will now be joining the Polish with laying out an extensive minefield near to the area of the Kaliningrad border. Not only that, the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to continue their defensive efforts throughout the entirety of Ukraine, and we've also been able to see that overnight the Volgograd oil refinery was hit once again. The oil pipeline in Krasnodar has, oddly enough, spontaneously combusted. It wasn't even attacked, it just blew up again. And we also were able to hear that there was a fire at the Simferopol airport, which we believe may have been a result of a Ukrainian attack. Nevertheless, we have a major amount of news today, and getting on into our first major piece of news, we were able to hear that the Houthi leadership has been decapitated within the area of western Yemen. According to the National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who made statements today on national television, he stated that we have taken out key Houthi leadership, including their head missileer. I don't really know who the head missileer would be, but nevertheless, he also stated that we've hit their headquarters, we've hit communication nodes, weapons factories, and even some of their over-the-water drone production facilities in just the last couple of days. It appears that the statements by the National Security Advisor is suggesting that U.S. airstrikes have not only debilitated the Houthis, or really decapitated the Houthis' abilities to conduct strikes or acts of piracy on the high seas, but it also appears that they may have knocked out the very leadership that the United States of America would have negotiated with. At this point, considering that that would be the case, we may see the new leaders rise through the ranks of the remaining parts of the Houthi leadership, and then may try and get into some form of negotiation with the United States government to stop the strikes against the Houthis. Nevertheless, it also is a likelihood that this could continue on for quite some time, and while a lot of the Houthis' abilities have largely been decapitated at this point, along with their leadership, by U.S. Navy airstrikes, it may be the case that we will possibly see that the Houthis will continue on their resistance, much like Hezbollah and Hamas have against the state of Israel for decades at this point, even when those organizations have been brought down to practical cinders in terms of their abilities and really their competency against the Israeli armed forces or against Western and American forces as a whole. However, we have also been able to hear inside of the area of the western part of the Arabian Peninsula that the Israelis are once again conducting limited ground operations within the area of the Gaza Strip, as we were able to see video evidence of the IDF now launching ground operations within the area of Beit Hanun. Beit Hanun is a small town which is a part of the city of Gaza within the most northeasterly part of the Gaza Strip. The Israeli armed forces have already moved back across the border into the area of Beit Hanun and are once again conducting military operations in this area in hopes to finally knock out Hamas once and for all, or at least hold down the Gaza Strip long enough that it will force Hamas out of hiding and into open attacks against the IDF, where the IDF will be able to target and destroy these Hamas forces that may be left over, that are still conducting attacks against the state of Israel to this day. Here in this last part of the clip, we can see a Merkava Mark IV with a cope cage rolling over the hill, and the clip ends right there. But once again showing us that the Israelis are still having to take the Hamas threat somewhat seriously, although their abilities have been greatly degraded due to the previous Israeli ground operation inside the Strip. However, Israel's problems don't really end just there, as we have been able to hear that apparently the Israelis are now concerned that there may be a war with the Republic of Turkey over the situation in Syria, as we've heard that Israeli security sources are stating that there is a fear of direct conflict with Turkey on Syrian soil. And we've also been able to hear that the Israeli prime minister is apparently fearing a Turkish invasion or a Turkish takeover of Syria and is convening a security discussion in the coming hours. This is coming as a statement has been made by the Syrian interim government where it appears that they are willing to conduct a land transfer to the Turkish military. We've already heard that apparently they're in advanced negotiations to transfer the control of the Tadmur region to the Turkish military, and a defense source warns that direct friction between Israel and Turkish forces in Syria now appears to be inevitable. We do understand that the Tadmur region is a fairly significant area of the Republic of Syria. This is actually the central area of the desert, and we're not entirely sure what this means for Turkish control of the region, as currently Turkish forces are incredibly far north inside the country, and controlling anything around the Tadmur region, which is centered around Palmyra, would be incredibly difficult to be able to try and control. Not only that, the Tadmur region actually includes the city of Homs as well, so we're not entirely sure what this means for the future of the Syrian interim government or for the future of Syria as a whole, because it does appear that, at least in this one fell swoop, if the Syrian interim government agrees to this, the Republic of Turkey may end up controlling, possibly indefinitely, a large swath of land inside of the Syrian interim government or the future Syrian Arab Republic. For this reason, we are believing that the Israelis are incredibly concerned that any sort of Turkish involvement in the region could possibly continue to destabilize it, and there could be a lack of actual administration or governance within these regions that are controlled by the Republic of Turkey, which would lead to an increased amount of insurgent forces conducting attacks possibly against the state of Israel. However, there is also an equal argument to be made that the Turks may be as stabilizing a force within Syria as the Israelis, as neither side has really actually shown any full-on involvement in creating a stable situation in Syria, but rather have attempted to continue to destabilize the situation through their self-centered actions of trying to secure their national national security interests, or largely their defensive reasons or strategies within the region. Moving on from that, however, we have also been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran has continued to get more threats against them by the United States of America about denuclearization. This was once again another statement by the National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who stated that the United States wants Iran's nuclear program dismantled completely. And I quote, "Iran has to give up its program in a way that the entire world can see. All options are on the table, and it is time for Iran to walk away completely from its desires to have a nuclear weapon." This is something that we've already heard that the Iranian Islamic Republic's government will not be willing to accept, as we have seen the Khamenei, who is the leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, has stated time and time again that regardless of sanctions and regardless of any threats or actions that the United States may take, the Islamic Republic of Iran is going to be steadfast in its commitment to producing a nuclear weapon, so that way they'll be able to conduct a heightened sense of security or defense for their nation, meaning that it will be completely impervious to attacks due to the threat of a nuclear response. And we've also heard that they are wanting to pursue nuclear weapons to continue to propel their ambitions within the region. This means that while they would be supporting and sponsoring terrorist forces to attack the state of Israel and many other American aligned states throughout the region, no one would really be able to respond, because once again the Islamic Republic of Iran would be nuclear armed, and any kind of an actual conventional armed response directly against Iran may result in a form of a nuclear attack against the aggressing party against Iran. Although they really would be the defending party, technically they would be the aggressing party. It does appear that at this moment the United States has reached a crossroads in the Middle East and will have to decide whether to step back and let the Iranians actually produce a weapon of mass destruction, or to go in and actually dismantle the Iranian nuclear program either on the ground or through airstrikes from above. It is incredibly clear at this point that this is a critical moment within the Middle East, and a lot of people are wondering what really will be happening, or what the U.S. stance really will be on this situation. Are we bluffing, or will we actually go in and take some serious action? Let me know in the comments section what y'all are thinking. Do y'all think that the United States should take some incredibly serious armed action against the Islamic Republic of Iran, airstrikes, or possibly limited ground involvement to take care of Iran's nuclear program? Or do you think that the United States should step back and allow Iran to possess a nuclear weapon well on into the future, and not only that, expand a nuclear arsenal and their missile abilities to where they could directly threaten the continental United States and the hundreds of millions of people that live here, and not only that, the hundreds of millions of people that live within the Western world as a whole, including inside of Europe? But moving on out of the Middle East for a brief moment, we have been able to hear that the People's Republic of China has unveiled a new cable cutter. Apparently, this cable cutter is a fairly special kind. It can disrupt cable communications by simply cutting the cable in itself. It is able to cut lines at depths of up to 4,000 meters, which is about 13,000 feet under the sea, and has been designed specifically for integration with China's advanced crewed and uncrewed submersibles. It's been developed by China's Ship Scientific Research Center and State Key Laboratory of Deep Sea Manned Vessels, and it appears to be able to target armored cables lined with steel, rubber, and polymer sheets that make up the overwhelming majority of global data transmissions. They just revealed the deep sea cable cutting device capable of severing the world's most fortified undersea data and power lines at depths of 4,000 meters, and it once again appears to be a direct sign that the People's Republic of China has been working, or has already worked in the past, at creating an ability where they could destroy these undersea cables quite easily and then once again start to cause severe damage to Western infrastructure. It's entirely possible at this point that many of the cable cutting operations that have been conducted around the world, including those in the Baltic, may have been an undertaking of the People's Republic of China and this new cable cutting device. Although, to be entirely frank, the Baltic Sea really isn't deep enough to even require the use of this cable cutting device that could reach down to about 13,000 feet under the sea. The Baltic Sea isn't that deep. But beyond that, it is something important to note that the Chinese do possess this ability and could use it in the outbreak of a conventional war. Meanwhile, inside of Eastern Europe, we have also been able to hear some fairly significant news as well about what's going on in Ukraine and really what's going on with the Russian Federation as a whole today. U.S. diplomatic negotiations are once again beginning. We were able to hear that from Rustem Umerov, that the U.S. and Ukrainian teams have once again met in Riyadh, and according to Umerov, we are implementing the President of Ukraine's directive to bring a just peace closer and to strengthen security. The agenda includes proposals to protect energy facilities and critical infrastructure. Today, we're working through a number of complex technical issues. Our delegation includes energy experts as well as military representatives from the naval and air components. It appears that at this point, the United States government, or at least the United States delegation team, may not really understand the full grasp or scope of the situation that's currently happening inside of Eastern Europe, as we have been able to hear that the head of the diplomatic negotiating team, Witkoff, has stated that Putin isn't trying to conquer all of Europe, and this is a very different situation from World War II. This is something that I have to say is one of the most ignorant statements that I've ever heard. I actually cannot even really hide my disdain for that kind of a statement, because it's pretty much playing right into the hands of the Russian Federation. This is a situation that was exactly seen at the start of World War II, to be entirely frank, and for Witkoff to not see that, he either has to be blind to history, or he has to have some sort of a clear and evident bias towards one of the parties, meaning that he's not a suitable negotiator. To explain a little bit of what we're seeing right now in the current situation and what we saw in World War II, let me take a moment in a very, very short form to explain what we're seeing right now. The Russian Federation is currently conducting a war in Ukraine with clear territorial ambitions and ambitions to create a larger sphere of influence inside of Eastern Europe. Over the past decade, Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, has made it incredibly clear that his territorial ambitions lie further beyond Ukraine and include the Baltics, parts of Poland, and also Finland. This has been stated multiple times on Russian state television, and this has also been stated multiple times in direct quotes by Vladimir Putin and also writings of Vladimir Putin in the past. Once again, that's the situation that we're seeing in the present day. Let me make it a little bit clear what we were seeing with the Nazi Germans back in the 1930s, which apparently, according to Witkoff, isn't the same as what we're seeing right now. Adolf Hitler, leading the Nazi Germans, wanted to expand the territory of the German, I guess you could say state, or Nazi Germany, to include larger parts of Eastern Europe. He initially began this by annexing Austria in an Anschluss, and then in 1938, during the Munich Conference, he stated that he wanted to bring all of the German-speaking people of the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia under the control of the Nazi state. The British sent negotiators, led by Neville Chamberlain, to the Munich Conference of 1938, and in the Munich conference, the negotiator said that Hitler seemed to be incredibly genuine and his interest to just only have the Sudetenland and only unite the German-speaking people under one roof, and that his ambitions would never expand further eastwards into Poland or the Soviet Union. They accepted the agreement, and while Hitler had made it very clear in Mein Kampf and also in his statements in the past that he does want to continue to expand further east and continue to create Lebensraum, which is called living room for the German people, the British negotiators believed that Hitler wasn't really looking for that, actually, and he was only wanting a little sliver of land inside of the Czech Sudetenland. They agreed to allow that to be handed over to Hitler. He then annexed all of the Czech Republic and created a puppet state out of Slovakia only a little while later, and then he invaded Poland in 1939, starting off World War II. The parallels are quite literally identical. One would have to be blind to not see it. Vladimir Putin's ambitions does expand much farther into Eastern Europe, as he is once again wanting to reinvade reinvigorate the abilities of the Russian Federation, and from what we can largely see, he wants to be able to create a second Russian empire and largely be viewed as its czar. That is an incredibly clear ambition of Putin. It's been a clear one for quite some time. We've been hearing about it for at least 10 years. And this is the reason why it appears that the US-led delegation under Witkoff is largely going to be incapable of producing any kind of a positive output or a positive outcome for the Ukraine war, because it appears that they are being blinded, much like the British negotiators in 1938 with Nazi Germany, to the actual ambitions or pursuits of the Russian Federation because of some possible bias or an absolute ignorance. Witkoff isn't actually an experienced diplomat. He's a real estate guy, from what I understand. And once again, selling a house doesn't really have a lot to do with negotiating the end to a war. They're entirely different things, and this guy doesn't really seem to know a lot about actually ending a war. The U.S., I guess you could say, mission for peace is not a bad mission at all, and we'll either see that there will actually be a reasonable peace coming out of it, or that it's very clear that the Russians don't want to end the war, and then the war continues on as a result of that. Either way, it turns out fairly all right for really everyone involved. However, having someone like Witkoff at the helm is something that will only produce catastrophic results due to his lack of understanding or lack of perception on what's going on in the world, and I would suggest that the United States government should replace Witkoff as the chief delegator or the chief diplomat of the U.S. delegation and bring in someone else that may possibly understand the situation a lot better. I would personally say that Mike Pompeo would be a great option, or Keith Kellogg, who's already been moved from the diplomatic delegation, was also a great option as well, to be able to actually understand what's at stake, what is currently being fought for, and what the further implications for Eastern Europe would be. But at this moment, this is the situation we're being dealt, and it's not that great of a situation as far as the delegation is concerned. Moving on from that, though, and into the greater Eastern European sphere, we can see that the fear of Russia spilling over this conflict or their territorial expansion into Eastern Europe is quite evident, as the Lithuanian government has stated that there may be an attack in the fall against them. According to Bild, a Russian attack on Lithuania could happen as early as this fall. Russia has announced large-scale exercises in Belarus, which have been seen by satellite, and the Baltic states are concerned that Russian armed forces could cross the border during these exercises. At the same time, NATO's Article 5, at least for the US, may no longer apply, against which the deterrent mechanism is weakening. Meaning that the Russian Federation, sensing that the United States of America may not defend the Eastern European states as they would have in the past, may be seeing blood in the water and may attempt to conduct a territorial expansion into Lithuania to cut off the Baltics from the rest of NATO and to also make sure to close off the Suwalki Gap immediately, ensuring that the supply lines to Kaliningrad would not be severed in a larger conventional war later on in the future. It is also entirely possible that this may kick off the large conventional war that may happen in the future outright in the current present day, which once again would be a fairly concerning situation, as this most likely would mean that the United States of America may not be involved in the actual conflict in Eastern Europe or attempting to try and defend the European part of NATO from the Russian aggression. For this reason, we've seen that the Lithuanian state is now beginning to mind their border with Kaliningrad and also Belarus, as it appears that they are following the Polish lead and they are preparing to create some sort of major defensive positions or lines to be able to stop the Russian Federation and the Republic of Belarus from being able to conduct an unmitigated lightning offensive through their territory in Eastern Europe before they could really mobilize some form of an armed response. Moving on from that, though, and into the actual Ukraine war, it doesn't appear that the Russian Federation is doing all too well, although they are bolstering themselves and trying to beat their chest a little bit and make themselves look incredibly strong. It doesn't really appear that they're that strong, at least compared to Ukrainian drones, as we were able to hear that the Volgograd refinery was attacked once again last night. We were able to see some clips of this. We can see a cameraman looking out into the darkness, and we can see a little bit of a flash right there as the Volgograd refinery was hit again. And that's the end of that clip. But moving on from that and into the next one, we can also see another clip of the Volgograd refinery getting hit. And then it reverts back to the same clip, which was a little unfortunate. But nevertheless, we were able to confirm that the Volgograd refinery was hit again. The Volgograd refinery takes up a considerable area of the southern portion of the city of Volgograd. We do believe that at this point, the direct refinery itself may have been hit, but there are some surrounding facilities, such as this fuel tank farm and also this pumping facility that may have also been hit as well. Although we do not know entirely certain right now, we most likely will have a very certain important picture coming within the next few hours as we go live tonight on our usual live stream. We also were able to hear that within the area of the pipeline down towards the town of Kavkazskaya, that it appears that the pipe has exploded again. This is footage coming from just a few hours ago, and it appears that the pipeline has, for some reason, actually exploded on its own. The fire was largely being brought under control, and it's now, once again, spontaneously combusted and is now burning out of control again. A Ukrainian attack did not result in the second fire. It appears to be an aftermath of the first strike and the fire that resulted from that strike about several days ago.
Я же говорил, в нашу смену девочка должна произойти.
Ты так радуйся.
Вот это вытихает.
Да.
And the fire continues to burn quite nicely as the video begins to end. Moving on from that, though, and from the internal situation inside the Russian Federation and moving into occupied Crimea, we were also able to see that there was a major fire that broke out at the Simferopol airport. We don't know exactly what's creating the smoke from the Simferopol airport. It is currently being used by the Russian Air Force. The smoke is white in nature, possibly suggesting some form of a munitions fire, which may mean that a small ammo cache at the facility has been hit or just spontaneously caught on fire due to poor storage management protocols. But moving on out of that area of Crimea and on up into Ukraine itself, we have been able to hear some interesting developments within this region as well, as we were able to hear that apparently Ukraine shot down 4 helicopters today, including an Mi-28 possibly, but we were able to hear, at least from the general statement, that they were able to shoot down 4 helicopters of varying types that the Russian Federation was using inside of Ukraine today. Once again, we don't really have any picture or video evidence to corroborate that, at least at the moment, but we are going to be putting out that story right now, so that way when we get the picture and video evidence, we were able to just follow up with the statement made by the Ukrainian armed forces earlier on in today. Meanwhile, in Zaporizhia, we've also been able to see that the Russian Federation has apparently broken the 30-day energy ceasefire, as we can see that a Russian attack actually directly hit a Ukrainian substation today in Zaporizhia, once again causing a blackout within the surrounding area. The Russian Federation seems to be willing to accept a limited ceasefire agreement on energy infrastructure alone and then break it only hours after it was agreed upon and then days later once again. As we can see right here, the damage to the substation is significant and is conducive of a Russian attack directly onto the facility. And moving on from that little bit of news and on into southern Ukraine, we also were able to see that apparently an Su-30 or an Su-27 of the Russian Air Force was hit pretty badly, apparently, starting an engine fire, although it appears that there was some limited surface controls that were still available to the pilots, as it appears that they're trying to send it over the horizon and possibly back to its airfield. Nevertheless, it is nice to see that the Ukrainians were able to conduct a successful air defense operation, at least within that particular moment, and it's a little interesting to know what they hit it with. We actually don't know at this point. It may have been a Manpad, it may have been a Patriot, it may have been something in between, but still, a very impressive hit by the Ukrainian SSO against a Russian air superiority fighter, and hopefully that'll be causing the Russian Federation to roll back their air operations near to the front lines, and once again take a more cautious approach to air operations inside the Ukraine theater, or the Ukrainian campaign altogether. But nevertheless, that is all of our breaking news for the day. I've got to thank all of you all so much once again for watching. I hope you all have enjoyed this greatly, but if you enjoyed this little snippet, although this may be an incredibly long video, it's really a little snippet of all of the news that we put together in a day. If you really enjoyed this, please make sure to check out our live stream later tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be running a live stream tonight covering all of the news from around the world in much greater detail than we did tonight, and not only that, today is a very special day for many of our viewers here in the channel, as it is the 3rd anniversary of the founding of the LSA, the Least Spring Army, which is our community here on the Enforcer channel. I have to thank everyone for being with the Least Spring Army for about 3 entire years, as the Enforcer channel has continued to cover the news day in and day out of all developments going on around the world, and I hope that today was no exception to our usually pretty good and well-researched news coverage that we were able to put out on pretty much everything going on in the world these days, which is, well, quite honestly, be a lot. If y'all have enjoyed this even further than that and would also like to make sure to hear about our upcoming live streams and videos daily, make sure to subscribe. We put out videos like this every single day that there's enough news. And lately, we are starting to get enough news again to put these out nearly every single day. Not only that, we do run live streams every single day of the week, except for Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single night. Those run like a bus. They run every single day, hell or high water. Of course, I have to thank everyone so much for watching so far, and if you have ultra liked the video that we put out today to an insane degree, make sure to support us on Patreon. We've got to give a massive thanks to all the folks who are currently on Patreon right now supporting this channel, because y'all helped to make this thing possible. We were able to keep the lights on and pay our bills doing this as a full-time job thanks to the folks who support this channel financially, and that is the reason why these videos are able to come out every single day, is thanks to folks like the people on Patreon. So if you want to be one of those folks, click on the link in the description below and you'll go straight to Patreon where you can support the channel. If you want to, you don't have to, it's an optional thing. But still, a big thanks to everyone once again for watching, and we will see you all in the next one.